Not at all. I still joke with people that education's perhaps been in our DNA. So I've either been doing this 22 years or all my life. But no, I look back on sort of my first semester at university. It honestly probably only took me about 15 minutes of my first term to decide that education is certainly what I wanted to pursue with my life. And the 15 minutes isn't necessarily to diminish or marginalize the significance of such an important decision, but I genuinely believed at that point that there'd be very few sectors that would enable me to fulfill such a compelling social imperative. So yeah, I think never a given, but certainly an active choice to enter the family business.
What was it about education, other than it being the family business, that drew you?
Look, when you have the ability to be able to inculcate the right values, and for me, values above all else in young people, you know that it's going to be an incredibly powerful catalyst, certainly to improve the state of our world. So if I was to simplify it, I think that's the big attraction with the sector.
But with it comes big responsibility on a number of levels, personal and
Sure.
professional. You're carrying a family name. Have you
hmm
ever met people who assume that you are in the job you're in because you're a Varkey? Do people ever underestimate you?
Look, certainly in the early years, inevitably, you know, people would assume that, well, he's in the business. There's an inevitable sense of entitlement that family businesses will necessarily carry with it. Um, I wasn't raised that way. I think sort of humility was a really important value that governed our family. And so for me, and actually, one of our core values at GEMS is always learning. So when I look back to certainly my early years in the organization, that's frankly the mindset and principle that I applied in almost every interaction. And I was really blessed to have an incredible set of peers and colleagues, including my father, who were always willing to share their wisdom and their insight and their experience. And frankly, all I needed to do was to be able to soak it all in. And hopefully, over time, I've been able to apply their principles, at least in my leadership approach.
And you've not just stepped into the role of CEO, you've held numerous positions across the organization for 2 decades before taking that top job just over
Sure.
8 years ago. How did that prepare you?
Look, I think I've been fortunate that I've fulfilled a number of functions within the organization. Everything from trying to grow the business. So, I led business development for a while. I actually started in operations. So understanding what it takes to not just conceptualize a school, but to build it and then ultimately to be able to deliver on our sort of education promise to families. And then obviously, as I sort of grew through the organization, the fact that we've had the benefit, certainly over the last 15 to 18 years, institutional investors in the business as well, that again gave me insight into the expectations in and around governance, being an appropriate steward and guardian of not just families' capital, but other people's capital as well. So they've all been incredibly valuable and incremental to, frankly, the role that I do today.
Your father's still chairman of the group. What's that relationship like? Do you ever disagree?
Of course, of course, I don't think it would be possible to sustain a relationship as long as we have without the ability to be able to, be able to respectfully disagree with one another. if but what I always like to tell people is that, well, you may choose to disagree, or you may disagree on a narrow issue or an opportunity or an area of risk within the business. But as long as you're aligned on the big things, right? As long as you're always aligned and driven by the same vision, we're all driven by the same purpose. Um, Eventually, things sort of converge, and they how do I put it? They turn out for the best.
Is it, do you feel the weight of expectation of not of preserving the business and growing the business for the previous generation, for the next generation, and for your sizable and notable institutional investors, Brookfield and others that you mentioned there?
Sure. Look, if there wasn't a weight of expectation, then frankly, the nature of the work that I do each and every day, would effectively be meaningless. So, no, I think there is expectation, but it's one that I welcome. It's one that I enjoy. I think if we look at the most notable education institutions around the world, their history spans hundreds of years. So, a big part of my role, and who knows about the next generation, but it is about sort of preserving that legacy. It's about being able to ensure that the work that we do today actually carries forward for the next 50 to 100 years. Certainly, education leaders of my generation, and certainly what I think of as this generation, they're characterized by this restless dissatisfaction for the status quo. Um, I think one of the most common critiques around modern education is that it optimizes for standardization and compliance. It's sort of age-based progression and high-stakes exams, when in fact, what the world really needs is the ability for students to demonstrate real mastery and curiosity and real competence. So I believe that this generation of education leader is much more willing to tear up the old frameworks, the old playbooks, in order to find a real way of rethinking education, making it much more dynamic, much more future focused, making it much more future relevant for every learner.
Well, you're leading in the time of AI, a time at which we're increasingly being told that everything we're ever learned won't matter, that this generation is going to be quickly replaced, that there won't be graduate entry jobs. The people leading this revolution, a lot of them have dropped out of education to do their own thing. How do you motivate students and how do you know which way to guide them amongst that?
I think artificial intelligence and exponential technologies, um, at least for our students, must be seen as an enabler and a tool. It's less that, and I think you would have heard this adage, it's less that AI is going to replace your job, but it may replace someone that's unable to use artificial intelligence or machine learning adeptly. Right. So for me, it's an enabler, it's a tool, it's a catalyst to help you do the work that you're passionate about, whatever your purpose is. It enables you to be able to do it much, much more productively, much more effectively. It's able to give you the ability to be able to leap beyond what perhaps would have been possible um, if it was just you without, you were speaking to it earlier, without your AI companion.
How do you make sure you do that equitably? You've launched what's described as Dubai's most expensive school in terms of fees, the GEM School of Research and Innovation. Tell me about whether or not you had pushback against the fee level for that school, either internally or externally, the decisions you made there?
The GEM School of Research and Innovation, frankly, was us recognizing that Dubai had matured. It had certainly reached a new inflection point in terms of the income profiles of families that were coming in. And it was us just responding to what we saw as the real demand. A school like SRI, um, and its fee level isn't necessarily unique. You've got many schools around hub cities around the world that are as expensive, if not more expensive. But I think what SRI gave us the opportunity to do was really build, um, whether it's infrastructure, the physical, but also in terms of the curriculum and the people that frankly hadn't been seen here before. I think going back to your point around equitable, a lot of the innovations that we're driving at SRI, we're actually cascading to other parts of our organization, to our most affordable schools. We're just using SRI as, frankly, that sort of hub and sort of pilot where we can test something. And then based on its efficacy and its effectiveness, actually, we've started to roll out elements of it to all of the other schools in our portfolio.
There is a lot of emotion, though, around running education as a profitable business. It comes up every single time we interview
Sure.
you. Talk to me about the ethical decisions that you have to make about the education that you provide and making sure you can provide it to as many children as possible. How do you make those decisions?
Look, at GEMS, we've always believed that education quality and financial sustainability are not competing priorities. Instead, we think they're actually very deeply connected. A school system that's able to consistently deliver strong outcomes, trust, and long-term value will naturally be more resilient and sustainable. And I would hope that having grown from a single classroom over 60 years ago to an organization today that has the privilege of educating almost 150,000 students in the UAE alone is some proof of that.
Where are you taking GEMS? I know you've submitted a bid to buy a Saudi school operator a few months ago. How do you want to grow it? Organically, inorganically, geographically? Where's the path?
Um, Obviously, there's still enough growth momentum here within the UAE, and we want to make sure that we're able to support and deliver um, the schools that D33 and the broader UAE national agenda requires. I mean, we are planning for a significant population inflow, so making sure that we have schools to deliver to that need is really important, and that would be sort of the first priority for us. The second priority is geographic diversification. I think we've been incredibly successful in the UAE, but we believe that our purpose can be just as easily fulfilled in other core markets now. Adjacent markets like Saudi Arabia make a huge amount of sense. It's an incredibly large market. They've got an ambitious reform agenda. And key to that is going to be a high quality education system. And given what we've been able to be able to do in Dubai and the UAE, where we would hope that we've been an enabler of the progress and success that we've seen here, we think we can do something very similar in some of these other markets.
How big could you get in Saudi Arabia? What's the goal?
Look, over a period of time, it's not inconceivable that we could replicate an ecosystem in Saudi Arabia equivalent to what we've done in the UAE. Over what period of time? That's up for debate, but certainly it's possible. I would argue that we should be able to do in Saudi Arabia over the course of the next quarter century what it's taken us close to 50 years to do in the UAE.